Salutations, respected viewers. This is George from Ireland. So this is my take on the Judge Brett Kavanaugh hearings. So who is he? Well, he's a federal judge in the United States. President Trump has attempted to appoint him to the Supreme Court, and he has to be confirmed by the Senate. Justice Antonin Scalia died a couple of years ago now, and trying to fill that post. And they're not been able to do so far, bring up the Supreme Court to its full complement. So it was all going quite well for Judge Kavanaugh. He's had a distinguished career, served in George W. Bush's White House and so on. Indeed, married a secretary from George Bush Jr.'s White House, and is broadly conservative in his legal philosophy. And it looked quite rosy for him until testimony surfaced against him. This woman, Dr. Blasey Ford, claims that when they were at secondary school that he attempted to rape her way back in 1982 or something like that. And so, well, it's all over the news. You probably know the rest. So I watched some of the interviews in the Senate, some of the testimony given. And I don't know anyone who disagrees with this, but Dr. Blasey Ford's testimony was credible. I don't believe it for certain. I'm not sure it's true, but it certainly didn't come across as dubious. As in, she spoke at length. She had all the particulars there. She was absolutely convinced of what she was saying, and all the rest of it didn't come across as evasive or mendacious in any way. Some people do. Now, there's some people who are highly gifted liars, who are well practiced, who are glib when it comes to this sort of thing, deceiving people. Or indeed, people can convince themselves that these things happened and all the rest of it. So I don't know of any reason, though, to doubt her veracity. She's not false accused people before, and so far as I can tell, has led an absolutely impeccable life. But the Senate is not a court of law and cannot convict anyone or indeed acquit anyone. That's the problem for Judge Kavanaugh, the latter. And she stood up fairly well to questioning. And the Republicans indeed had a woman speak up for them because they're all male and they thought it would look bad. This is like one gender against another. But we don't have trial by television. Well, the United States doesn't. Republic of Ireland doesn't. The UK doesn't. And then there was Judge Brett Kavanaugh, who was up, and they brought up things from his school days. Now, it might seem irrelevant what he was doing as an adolescent, except the first allegations of sexual misconduct, or frankly, crimes related to that. Just because a rape wasn't affected doesn't mean it's not a crime, because trying to rape someone, just like trying to murder someone, even though it managed to actually murder them, would still be a crime. And so because it related to when he was a minor, what he was doing as a minor is pertinent. Otherwise, it would seem unfair to bring this up decades later, that most people do rash things when they're teenagers. Asked about his alcohol consumption, illegal, of course, at the time. And he was evasive. There was a lot of circumlocution from him, repeating himself, I like beer, speaking in words of a syllable. He was shockingly lacking in articulacy for a judge, because lawyers are wordsmiths, are they not? And he's meant to be a scholar of jurisprudence, indeed a scholar of some very considerable note. So why couldn't he give a straight answer? I was deeply unimpressed with him. And then on certain very pointed questions, he was blinking an awful lot. And when the blink rate suddenly goes up, it's almost a surefire sign that the person is lying. And alcohol consumption is relevant because, even though this is 36 years ago, was he fully in control of his actions? He could have not quite remembered what he'd done that night and things like that. So it's not looking good for him in that sense. And it mentioned the Devil's Triangle and boasting about his excessive alcohol intake as an adolescent. Devil's Triangle, he claimed, was a drinking game. I wish they'd probe him on that one. How many times do you do it? Oh, you did it lots and lots of times. You're very familiar with it. What does it involve? And if he couldn't tell us, well, that doesn't sound like it's believable, because other people are saying it's something like a threesome, 2 men on 1 woman. So this periphrastination did not convince me that he's speaking the truth. And he's constantly mentioning his family, that the anguish it's caused them, and no doubt it has actually, but they always try and do this as a sympathy tactic to appear with the spouse and children and say what grief it's occasioned for the family. And if that other woman is married or has children, or even if she's not, doesn't have children and a husband, it's going to cause her family some hurt. So both of them having a pity party. That woman who was crying there, was it undignified? Well, perhaps it's quite difficult to talk about something which is fairly traumatic, even though, well, it was a long time ago. And that man, he didn't quite weep. Though he was close to breaking down, there was a catch in the voice. So it seemed they had a pity party, and this is what I think one of the more distasteful aspects of American life, the excessive emotionalism, the having to wear it on your sleeve, just how much hurt you feel. So they're both being put through pain by the other side, who are so beastly. So, as I say, he's not been convicted of any crime or even charged with a crime in relation to this. He's called for the FBI investigation on the belief that he'll be exonerated. One person's word against another's. As a juror, I would definitely acquit, no matter how credible the accuser was. But, there's some more corroborative testimony, not exactly witnessing the incident, that he was very drunk, that he did go into a room with her and blah, blah, blah. Was that consensual? And the line that the Republican question didn't push enough is could you be mistaken? I'm 100% certain. Well, how well did you know him? She didn't really probe the witness on that one. A Supreme Court judge should be all but blameless. I know no one can be absolutely above criticism, but you need to be pretty close. I mean, you are deciding justice at the highest possible level. It makes me call to mind Lord Hewitt's dictum from 1924 that justice must not only be done, it must manifestly and indubitably be seen to be done. Because supposing I'm a judge and I make a ruling, it's controversial. Almost every ruling has some people disagree with it. Maybe I was completely fair-minded in that ruling, right? However, if there is a persuasive reason someone could give why I wasn't fair, then that would look bad, even if actually I was. But there's a reasonable suspicion that I was prejudiced for some reason, then that would mean that justice wasn't seen to be done. There might be appearance of injustice. Even if there actually was justice, the appearance of injustice would undermine public confidence in the judiciary. So it can be a distinction between appearance and reality. Something might appear to be partial when it's actually not. That the reality might, but the judge was impartial. But because it looks like the judge was unbiased in some way, then, as I say, that would undermine the public's faith in the independence and impartiality of the judiciary, because a judge should be even-handed, should be dispassionate, should have no dog in this fight, no financial interest in the case he is deciding. Nemo iudex in causa sua. No one may be a judge in his own cause. So a judge ought to have unimpeachable integrity, particularly a Supreme Court judge, forgive me, and he lacks probity. There's all sorts of things that are wrong with him like that. So even though I'm not saying I believe that woman and he's not a criminal, I think for that reason I would not confirm him because I'm just not convinced he's telling the truth about his alcohol consumption and other issues like that. I realise the danger of blocking judges on the basis someone accused them of sexual harassment or attempted rape decades ago is then anyone can say, well, let's thwart that person's ambition. People come out of the woodwork to prevent a judge whose outlook they dislike being appointed to the Supreme Court. And is there comeback on that? I mean, the law of libel is not strong in the United States. So that's that. I don't like this partisanship and trial by television. Oh, well, if somebody with the other political outlook accuses somebody on my side, the person on my side must be innocent, the person on the other side must be guilty. Believe women, say the Democrats, except when they accuse Bill Clinton, and so on. And then Republicans are just as bad about it. So try to calm down, to de-escalate the whole row, and to deal with this in a even-handed, dispassionate manner, calmly assessing the evidence and not being blinded by partisan fury and not being blinded by our own tears when we're moved by the great empathy we have people who are suffering one way or the other. And it would be risible if it wasn't so serious and so sickening just how partisan people have been about this issue. Oh, it's my side, so I'm taking my side, and not looking at justice. And that's what it's all about. You know, justice is blind in that sense, and justice is not waving a party flag.